Hello, my name is Dr. Carol De Lima, and I'm a food technologist from FDA's Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition in the Office of Nutrition and Food Labeling. Today I will provide an overview of the Food Allergy Safety Treatment Education and Research Act, also known as the FASTER Act. The purpose of this webinar is to review basic information of the FASTER Act and address frequently asked questions. During my overview, I will cover the following topics: U.S. allergen labeling requirements, definition of a major food allergen, FASTER Act and FDA's implementation efforts, FDA's draft allergen evaluation guidance, and frequently asked questions related to the FASTER Act. To get us started, I'll provide a brief introduction to food allergies. Food allergies and other types of food hypersensitivities affect millions of Americans and their families. Food allergies occur when the body's immune system reacts to certain proteins in food. Food allergic reactions vary in severity from mild symptoms involving hives and lip swelling to severe life-threatening symptoms often called anaphylaxis that may involve fatal respiratory problems and shock. While promising prevention and therapeutic strategies are being developed, food allergies currently cannot be cured. Early recognition and learning how to manage food allergies, including which foods to avoid, are important measures to prevent serious health consequences. To protect those with food allergies and other food hypersensitivities, the FDA enforces regulations requiring food manufacturers to list ingredients on packaged foods and beverages. For certain foods or substances that cause allergies or other hypersensitivity reactions, there are more specific labeling requirements, which we will touch on later in the presentation. The FDA also conducts inspections and sampling to check that major food allergens are properly labeled on products and to determine whether food facilities implement controls to prevent allergen cross-contact and labeling controls to prevent undeclared allergens during manufacturing and packaging. When problems are found, the FDA works with firms to recall products and provide public notification to immediately alert consumers. In addition, the FDA has the authority to seize and remove violative products from the marketplace or refuse entry of imported products. The FDA also provides guidance to consumers and other stakeholders on best ways to assess and manage allergen hazards in food. Now I will talk about U.S. allergen labeling requirements. The Food Allergy Labeling and Consumer Protection Act, or FALPA, amended the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, or the FD&C Act. It defines major food allergens and requires that the label of a food that contains an ingredient that is or contains protein from a major food allergen to declare the presence of the allergen in a manner described by the law. Congress passed the act to make it easier for food allergic consumers and their caregivers to identify and avoid foods that contain major food allergens. FAPA was signed into law by President Bush in August of 2004. FALPA was self-implementing, which means that we did not have to develop any regulations. We just had to enforce the legal requirement, which automatically became effective for any food labeled after January 1st, 2006. A food that did not comply with the labeling requirements was deemed misbranded and would be subject to FDA enforcement action. FAPA amended two parts of the FD&C Act, namely Section 201, which deals with definitions, and Section 403, which deals with misbranded food. The law in Section 201 QQ provided a two-part definition for a major food allergen. First, a major food allergen means the following 8 foods or food groups: milk, egg, fish, crustacean, shellfish, tree nuts, wheat, peanuts, and soybeans. Second, a major food allergen means a food ingredient that contains a protein derived from one of these foods, with the following exceptions: a highly refined oil derived from one of these foods, or an ingredient derived from such a highly refined oil. Current FDA regulations, however, namely 21 CFR 101.4b14, requires that the common or usual name of any oil or fat ingredient used to make a packaged food regulated by FDA be identified by its specific food source. So regardless of whether soybean oil or peanut oil was highly refined, it would be declared as such on the food label, and the allergen would be identified. And the last one is raw agricultural commodities, and a food ingredient exempt under petitions or notification process specified in the law under 403W. The food allergen labeling requirements of the FDA Act apply to all FDA-regulated packaged foods, including dietary supplements. This means that all ingredients that either are or contain a major food allergen are subject to the food allergen labeling requirements of the FDA Act, including ingredients that would otherwise be permitted to use a collective declaration, for example, incidental additives, flavors, and colors. Congress established the list of major food allergens, and FDA cannot add to the list. However, FACPA states that FDA has the authority to undertake rulemaking for the labeling of food allergens not listed as major food allergens. A few more provisions of Section 403W. The law states that the allergens can be declared on the label in one of two ways, either the ingredient list or in a separate contained statement. Also, food allergen labeling has to be on the label and not just on the labeling. This means that allergen declaration has to be on the physical label of the product and cannot just be on the shelf cards, flyers, or website information, which is considered as labeling. Manufacturers that use flavoring, coloring, or incidental additives that bear or contain a major food allergen would also have to declare the allergen's presence. And finally, the food allergen labeling requirements of the Act only apply to ingredients that are intentionally added to food. Major food allergens that are present due to cross-contact are not addressed by these labeling provisions and should not be included in the ingredient list or contained statement. In April, Congress passed and President Biden signed the Food Allergy Safety, Treatment, Education, and Research Act, also known as the FASTER Act. The law updates the list of major food allergens in Section 201 QQ of the FDA Act to include sesame as the 9th major food allergen. This law takes effect on January 1st, 2023, at which point all provisions discussed in the previous slides will also apply to sesame. This law also does not require FDA to promulgate any regulations to implement its provisions. That means no amendment or establishment of new labeling regulations and no amendment to the preventive controls regulations by FDA is needed to implement the FASTER Act. Besides naming sesame as the 9th allergen, the law requires a report due to Congress 18 months from the date of enactment. This report is required of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and would be a joint effort. Other agencies like NIH and CDC will have a role along with FDA in working to develop the report. The report is required to include a description of ongoing federal activities related to the surveillance and collection of data on the prevalence of food allergies and severity of allergic reactions for specific food or food ingredients, including the identification of any gaps in such activities. Also, the development of effective food allergy diagnostics, the prevention of the onset of food allergies, the reduction of risks related to living with food allergies, and finally, the development of new therapeutics to prevent, treat, cure, and manage food allergies. The report is also to include specific recommendations and strategies to expand, enhance, or improve federal activities, including strategies to improve the accuracy of food allergy prevalence data by expanding and intensifying current collection methods, including support for research that includes the identification of biomarkers and tests to validate survey data and the investigation of the use of identified biomarkers and tests in national surveys. Also, strategies to overcome gaps in surveillance and data collection activities related to food allergies and specific food allergens. And finally, recommendations for development and implementation of a regulatory process and framework that would allow for the timely, transparent, and evidence-based modification of the definition of a major food allergen included in Section 201 QQ of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, including with respect to the scientific criteria for defining a food or food ingredient as a major food allergen pursuant to such process, including recommendations pertaining to evidence of prevalence and severity of allergic reactions to a food or food ingredient that would be required in order to establish that such food or food ingredient is an allergen of public health concern appropriate for such process, and opportunities for stakeholder engagement and comment as appropriate in considering any such modification to such definition. Since signing of the Act in April 2001, FDA has begun the task of implementing the FASTER Act. While FDA does not need to promulgate new regulations to implement FASTER, the agency has numerous informational websites, guidances, and reports that need to be updated. These documents will be updated on an as-needed basis based on priority and resources. The implementation efforts vary from very simple updates to the list of major food allergens in various FDA resource websites and documents to more complex items like publishing the guidance for our own set of factors for evaluating food allergens beyond the 8 major food allergens specified in the FDA Act, which will be addressed in more detail in the next slide. We are also beginning to work within the agency to gather information relevant to the report to Congress. As mentioned before, the report is an HHS-led activity, so we will also be working with other HHS agencies such as CDC and NIH. The agency periodically receives requests to evaluate different food allergens of public health importance, and the data submitted along with these requests have varied widely. We are currently working on a draft guidance for FDA staff and stakeholders that would explain our general approach to evaluating the public health importance of food allergens other than the major food allergens listed in the FDA Act. We have made significant progress on this draft guidance, and it is expected to publish for public comment by the end of June 2022. This draft guidance is closely linked to the report to Congress that is mandated by FASTER Act. The report specifically asks that we make recommendations for a regulatory process that would allow for the modification of the definition of a major food allergen. It also asks that the process be timely, transparent, and evidence-based, and specifically stated that the scientific criteria include evidence of prevalence and severity. Congress also specifically stated that we make use of stakeholder engagement for considering such modifications. Now I will address stakeholder frequently asked questions. Number 1, what are labeling requirements of the major food allergens? 9 foods or food groups are defined in the FDA Act as major food allergens. The major food allergens have to be declared by their source on the food label, either in the ingredient list or in a contained statement. For sesame, these requirements become effective on January 1st, 2023. Number 2, what does FDA plan to do with its draft guidance for industry voluntary disclosure of sesame as an allergen? The draft guidance for voluntary disclosure of sesame will remain in place until January 1st, 2023, which is the effective date of when sesame becomes a major food allergen. Number 3, companies may have products that contain sesame and may be stored for a considerable time prior to distribution, example, frozen and canned. Do they need to dispose of such products that are labeled and still in their possession if sesame labeling is not provided as required by the FASTER Act? Sesame becomes a major food allergen effective January 1st, 2023. Therefore, for packaged foods containing sesame as an ingredient that are introduced or delivered for introduction into interstate commerce on or after January 1st, 2023, sesame must be included in the contained statement or in the ingredient list. We believe that manufacturers have ample time to have the correct labels on their products. Number 4, must products with labels that do not comply with the FASTER Act be removed from the marketplace once the new labeling law is in effect? The FASTER Act does not require any action with respect to products that are on retail shelves before January 1st, 2023. The allergen labeling requirements of the SDNC Act apply to any packaged foods containing sesame as an ingredient that is introduced or delivered for introduction into interstate commerce on or after January 1st, 2023. We believe that the manufacturers have ample time to have the correct labels on their products. Number 5, can I start to label sesame as a major food allergen on the label now, effective January 1st, 2023, sesame must be included in the contained statement or in the ingredient list if it is used as an ingredient in the food. If manufacturers wish to start labeling sesame in the product as a major food allergen in advance of January 1st, 2023 effective date, we would not object. Number 6, should industry start adding a may contain sesame statement now or wait until the effective date of January 1st, 2023? FDA's food allergen labeling requirements do not address the use of advisory labeling such as may contain a certain allergen or other statements describing the potential presence of unintentionally incorporation of major food allergens in food products resulting from cross-contact. Advisory labeling should not be used as a substitute for adherence to good manufacturing practices, and any advisory statement that is used must be truthful and not misleading. Number 7, will sesame have to follow all the requirements of Section 403W of the FDNC Act on and after January 1st, 2023? Yes, the labeling of sesame as an allergen will have to meet the requirements of Section 403W of the FDNC Act for food introduced or delivered for introduction into interstate commerce on or after January 1st, 2023. Number 8, do dietary supplements that contain sesame or an ingredient derived from sesame have to declare sesame as a major food allergen on the label? Yes. With the effective date of January 1st, 2023, Section 403W of the FDNC Act applies to packaged foods. The definition of food under the FDNC Act includes dietary supplements. Dietary supplements that contain sesame or an ingredient derived from sesame have to declare sesame as a major food allergen on the label effective January 1st, 2023. Number 9, is it sufficient to declare tahini in the list of ingredients on a food product on or after January 1st, 2023? The FDNC Act requires declaration of the presence of each major food allergen on the product label using the name of the food source from which the major food allergen is derived. If tahini is used as the name of an ingredient, it must be followed by the name of the food source, which is sesame, in the ingredient list when the name of the food source of the major food allergen does not appear elsewhere in the ingredient list for another allergenic ingredient. For example, tahini would be followed by sesame in parentheses or declared in the contained statement. It would say contain sesame. And this would be on or after January 1st, 2023. Number 10, is sesame oil exempt from allergen declaration? Section 403W of the FDNC Act exempts highly refined oils from the allergen labeling requirements of the Act. However, they still must meet the requirements in 21 CFR 101.4B14, which states that the source of the oil must be declared. Therefore, regardless of whether allergen labeling is required, sesame oil would have to be listed as sesame oil in the ingredient list. In addition, we understand that sesame oil is typically produced to retain its characteristic flavor and aroma. Most sesame oils are produced from roasted sesame seeds followed by filtration steps, but rarely undergoes further refinement. If the oil is not highly refined, it must meet the labeling requirements of Section 403W of the FDA Act. Number 11, effective January 1st, 2023, will facilities need to have specific controls to prevent sesame cross-contact as per other major food allergens? Yes, similar to other major food allergens, if you manufacture food products with and without sesame as an ingredient in the same facility and sesame allergen cross-contact is reasonably likely to occur, you must follow current good manufacturing practices to prevent allergen cross-contact for sesame. Food facilities that are subject to the preventive controls requirements in 21 CFR Part 117 must conduct a hazard analysis and implement a food safety plan that may include allergen controls for proper labeling and the prevention of allergen cross-contact. While the effective date is January 1st, 2023, FDA encourages manufacturers to start to consider the potential for sesame allergen cross-contact and the appropriate controls. Number 12, effective January 1st, 2023, do labeling requirements for sesame extend to retail or other food service establishments as well? Are there any new considerations for sesame in the food sector? The food allergen labeling requirements of the FDA Act extend to foods containing major food allergens that are packaged by retail or food service establishments that are offered for human consumption. However, these labeling requirements do not apply to foods provided by a retail or food service establishment that are placed in a wrapper or container in response to consumers' orders, such as a sandwich wrapped in paper upon consumer request. Therefore, effective January 1st, 2023, the same would apply to foods containing sesame. Also, FDA will work to align the FDA's food code with the FASTER Act designation of sesame as the 9th major food allergen. The food code is a model code available for local, state, and other jurisdictions to adopt and apply to retail food establishments, including restaurants and grocery stores. It also includes supermarkets, hospitals, nursing homes, child care centers, and temporary food establishments that provide food directly to consumers. The 2017 Food Code contains provisions regarding major food allergens in the model code, as well as major food allergens information in its annexes. FDA will make appropriate updates to reflect the addition of sesame to the list of major food allergens in our next Food Code revision. And our last question, number 13, does the FASTER Act impact USDA-regulated products? The FASTER Act amended the definition of major food allergens in the FDA Act. Major food allergens are required to be labeled in accordance with Section 403W of the FDA Act. These requirements only apply to foods regulated by FDA under the FDA Act. We recommend that producers of meat products, poultry products, and egg products regulated by USDA contact the appropriate USDA agency regarding the labeling of such products. For more information, please visit FDA's Food Allergies webpage at the following link provided on this slide. Thank you very much.